guys, welcome back. It's Mrs. Vogel. Yesterday we read 4 chapters actually. We started out reading decisions, and just to recall what happened with decisions, Florida and Dallas had to decide what their decision was, whether to stay and go on the trips or whether to consider going again, and they did make the decision to go on those trips, right? And Tiller was kind of questioning, oh, are you gonna, miss me? And she said, of course I'm gonna miss you. And are you gonna miss me? Of course I'm gonna miss you. Just kind of that reassurance that we're making a good decision, I think. Oh, well, the kids need this. Or, oh no, Tiller and Sari really need this. So it's kind of interesting how they're both kind of questioning the same thing, whether or not they should do this, these trips. And then we read the chapter Nightmares, where everybody was just having nightmares about random things, which aren't really that random. Every dream is supposed to have a meaning, and we kind of talked about what perhaps do these dreams mean. We read the chapter Medicine, and that was kind of talking about the rehearsals and this is a genius idea. Let's go ahead and do these little trials. And then the last chapter we read was paddling and hiking, which is when both groups started off on their trial runs. Nothing crazy has happened quite thus far, except we find out that, Florida's kind of telling Tiller things, and Tiller's kind of telling her things, and whoa, what's going on here? We don't ever share our feelings, and here we are. And then at the very end of the chapter, we find out that poor little Dallas kind of forgot something very important, the compass, which is very important when you're hiking, right? So today we are going to start off reading chapter 33 called Z's Report. In the alley shack, Z leaned against the door. So like I said, they've already done gone. They're out of here. Mr. Trepid rubbed his hands together rapidly back and forth as if he were warming them. Already? Are you certainly sure? They've all gone. Gone. Zappo. Z picked at the wooden door frame, loosening a splinter. Mr. Trepid paced the room, talking as he went. Very good. Now we will start the project I mentioned. Are you prepared to keep this absolutely confidential? Z spat on the floor and eyed Mr. Trepid. Listen, if you don't trust me... Oh, no. Don't misunderstand me. Of course I know that you will keep this perfectly confidential. It's just that it's the most delicate... I got it. Just tell me what I gotta do and tell me what the salary will be. How good are you at map making? Map making? That doesn't sound too exciting to me. First, I want you to survey an area, and I'll tell you what to look for, and then I'll need you to make a map marking of locations of what is it exactly I am looking for, and where am I looking? Z picked at his teeth with that splinter. Down in Ruby Holler, you find their cabin, see, and then you go about, let's say 20 feet out from it and in a circle, and you look for a stone, and then if you don't find it, you go, say, 30 feet out and look, and on you go like that until you find it. Mr. Trepid explained. He had thought about doing this himself, but he didn't like rummaging around in the woods, and it would take far too much time. A stone. Do you have all your brains? Do you know how many stones there are in the holler? My guess is about 100 million. Unless you're talking about a special stone, like maybe it's green or red, or I don't know what it looks like, but my guess is it's not an ordinary stone. It's probably a big one, or maybe a big pile of ones. Z raked his fingers through his matted hair. What's so special about this stone or this pile of stones? Mr. Trepid had expected this question, and he was prepared with an answer. It marks a source, an oil source, he lied. See, we're thinking of drilling up there, and I'm just a little curious as to where this oil is. Seems to me you could have asked them. They probably would have told you. If it's on their property, what do they care? Who knows where it is? I'm not entirely sure it's on their property. So, where's my salary? I ain't got all day. Mr. Trepid handed him a wad of bills. That's just a deposit. You bring me the map with any special stones marked on it, and I'll give you the rest of the money. Don't worry, if you find the right spot, you'll get a fine salary. Okay, boss man, but I ain't spending a year looking. I'll go see what I see, and if it don't look too promising, I ain't gonna carry on scrambling through the dirt. When Mr. Trepid returned to the Boxton Creek home, he found his wife lying on the bed with a wet cloth draped over her forehead. He knew better than to ask what was wrong, because she would tell him. She would tell him which child had broken a window, and which one had broken an arm, and which one had tracked in mud, and which one had sassed her. And she would go on like that for hours. So, instead of asking her what was wrong, he said, I have some good news. I could use some good news, because that new girl broke. It's very good news. How would you like to leave this place and go off to an island somewhere? Mrs. Trepid slipped the cloth off her head and sat up. You have a mighty poor idea of a joke. I'm not joking. I think in a little time, very soon, maybe, we might be coming into some money. And where exactly is this money coming from? Is it going to drop down from heaven and land at our feet? Let's just say I've got some investments, some investments that should be coming through any day now. There was a knock at their door. From outside, Morgan said, Ma'am, it's time to get ready. Dinner ready. Mrs. Trepid swung her legs over the side of the bed and stood up. Lord, spare me. Chapter 34. Bearings. We'll be able to tell what direction we're going if the sun stays visible. And trees will help. Moss usually grows on the north side of the trees, and I'm so stupid for forgetting the compass. You're not stupid. I'm sure we'll be fine. Just fine. But she didn't sound convinced as they hacked through the brush. Let's talk about something, Dallas. Make the time pass more easily. Like what? Tell me about the scary toothless lunatic you and Florida keep referring to. Was he really toothless? Was he really a lunatic? Yep. So tell me about him. Well, I don't like to talk about it. Sometimes talking about it's good. Just pretend you're talking to Florida. So I don't know. What was his name? And what did that toothless mouth look like? Well, I guess I could talk about it a little. And so Dallas told Sari about the toothless Mr. Dreep and his wife and the fidgety fingers, and how Mr. Dreep had locked them in the cellar and then made them spend the night there in that damp rat place. But that's criminal. That's a terrible thing to do to anybody. Well, he thought I sassed him, see. He told us we were going to have to dig a well, and I told him we couldn't do that. So I guess being in the cellar was our punishment for sassing. Dig a well? But that's criminal. I can't get my head around this, Dallas. Even if you did sass him, that's no reason to put you in the cellar. That's kind of what we thought. But we weren't exactly sure. Not sure? You mean you didn't think it was strange? You didn't think it was terrible? What good would that do? But Sari was so upset and confused. Is being in that cellar why you and Florida are so afraid of rats and mice? And Dallas turned away. He didn't like to dwell on those things. His mind automatically stopped the scene and played a different one. Like now, he was imagining he was a pioneer. First person to ever hike this hill. Maybe he'd discover something incredible up here. Something no one else had ever seen. Sari interrupted his reverie. How'd you get out of the toothless lunatic's house? Well, in the morning, Mr. Creep Dreep let us out, and he told us to follow him outside. We were so glad to be out of that rat hole, breathing some real air, and we followed him. Then he handed us a couple shovels and told us to start digging. Well, we didn't want to, but he said we couldn't get breakfast until we made some progress on the well. And so we started digging. Dallas, you were digging a well? Well, I pretend I was digging for gold. You never know, right? And Florida pretended she was digging Creep Dreep's grave, so it didn't seem so bad, the digging. We dug for about 3 hours, and then we saw Creep Dreep walking away from the house like he was going out to the barn. So we watched until he was out of sight, and then we ran like nothing we've ever seen in your whole life. We ran and ran and ran and ran and ran, and we hid in some trees, and then we heard him calling us, and he sounded really, really mad, so we stayed dead still. Dallas, I can't hardly believe this. It makes me feel mighty sick to my stomach. It's okay. Don't feel sick. We got away, didn't we? Hey, will you look at that? They'd reached a ridge and a clearing in the trees. Look at all those bumpy lumps of dirt. Looks like giant anthills. Not as pretty as the Holler, is it? Sari dabbed at her forehead. Whew, sure is hot. You thirsty? Got the canteen? Canteen? Chapter 35. Stiff. On the banks of the hidden river, Tiller and Florida were finishing their lunch. You little stiff, Tiller asked, rubbing his back. A little. I'm about swole up and itching to death from these skeeter bites. Oh, I didn't count on my arms being so numb. Your arms numb? More sore than numb. I feel like I wrestled 100 hogs. How are we going to carry on paddling with our arms all sore and pitiful? We'll take it a little easier this afternoon. Let the river carry us along. We'll be lazy paddlers. Florida stood on the riverbank, her feet kicking at stones. It's a stinky smell here, don't you think? With all the muddy crud and all these ugly weed things. Hey, you. It's not that pretty smell like the Holler Creek where the itty-bitty flowers grow along the bank. Tiller closed his eyes. Oh, I know which flowers you mean. Tiller, you ever wish Dallas and Sari were here with us going on down this river? Tiller took a really deep breath. He looked up and down the river, and then he let his breath out very slowly, evenly. About every 2 minutes, I think that. You're not like Dallas. Is that good? Bad? Neither one. Well, how am I different? Florida kicked at the dirt. Well, Dallas is always thinking everything's going to be okay and stuff, but you complain a lot. Me? Complain? Yeah, like I do. No. It's just our nature. Florida knelt to examine a beetle scurrying along the bank. I would never want to be all by my lonesome, would you? Tiller felt his heart do its fluttering thing again. He couldn't imagine life without Sari. It pained him to even imagine it. And yet, not a half hour earlier, he'd been wondering what it would be like to be floating on down the river by himself. That's different, he told himself. That's not forever loneliness. He glanced at Florida and felt another flutter. He hoped Florida would never be alone. You hear me? Would you want to be all by your lonesome? No. And I need someone to listen to me complain. Florida tilted a twig toward the beetle, letting it run up the side. I didn't mean it was such a bad thing to be a complaining person. Don't go get your feelings hurt. As they pushed off down the river again, Tiller said, Florida, aside from that scary, toothless lunatic's place, did you and Dallas ever get seen anywhere else? Oh, sure, Florida said as she was dipping her paddle slowly into the water. You want to hear about the hoppers who said that we were thieves? Or the crambeps who thought we were brutes? Or the nasty Bridgerton boys? Why don't you start with the hoppers? Chapter 36, A Long Chain. The air was hot and sticky as Sari and Dallas thrashed their way through a thicket. Vines tangled their legs and briars jabbed their arms. It looked like this would be the shortest route over the path on that hill, but I don't know now. Let's stop and rest a bit, okay? Sari reached into her backpack and pulled out a yellow scarf which she tied around her neck. If she'd worn something like that at home, Tiller would have said, What's that around your neck? You never wear scarves. But here, Dallas didn't know and wouldn't care whether or not she was the kind of person to wear a yellow scarf or not. She felt a little silly thinking about it. There's more bugs here than in the Holler. You notice that? Dallas said as he was swatting flies. Maybe my lucky yellow scarf will keep them away. Maybe your lucky yellow scarf will help us find water. I bet there's a creek right down there. I bet it's real clear, not some old muddy poison creek, and we'll splash in it and we'll drink as much as we want. Sari sat against a tree and closed her eyes. She imagined that there was an invisible ball of twine unfolding behind her, all the way back across the hills to Ruby Holler. That invisible ball of twine was right there in her hand, and she had to hold it tight because if she let go of it, she and Dallas would be lost out here. What are you thinking about so serious like? Oh, nothing much. You're not homesick, are you? Me? Shoot, no. We're on an adventure, not homesick at all. You know what you look like sitting there? You know that picture in your kitchen of the girl and the lady sitting in the woods? You look like that lady. I do? That's my mother. And that girl's me. Sari felt a sudden deep longing for her dead mother and then wondered if it was harder to miss a mother you've loved or, like Dallas in Florida, to miss a mother you'd never known. And that picture next to it with the two men, who are they? That's Taylor and his daddy. And the one next to that, the one of the couple by the creek, that's my grandmother and grandfather. And the one next to that, that's me and Taylor and our kids. Oh, it's like a whole long chain of connected people. Yes, I guess it is. You want me to build a little fire? I know it's hot, but we could eat that can of beans. They'd be better hot than cold. You got the matches? Matches? Well, I'll be. They just keep forgetting all sorts of things, don't they? All right, so some questions about today. Z. He seems a little strange, and so does Mr. Trepid. So Mr. Trepid's asking him to find all these rocks, right? Or these stones. Do you remember what he's trying to find? Exactly. Do you think Z is suspicious, or do you think he has room to be suspicious? Do you think he's actually going to make this map? Do you think this map is going to lead Mr. Trepid to these treasures? Interesting. After we read Z's report, we went on to Bearings, where we realized that, you know, they're making mistakes, but they're trying to pass the time, talking about things. And Tiller and Sari are both finding some new information about Dallas and Florida that really kind of breaks their hearts, you can tell. I think I'd be the same way. I'm, you know, a mom, so it would be awful to think of, you know, kids being alone and not having the people they need in their lives, you know, to make it a happy one. So I can totally see where they're coming from. Maybe you as a kid are thinking, well, geez, I could probably handle that. Or maybe you're thinking, I couldn't handle that. Okay. Do you think you'd be as honest as Dallas and Florida have been to Tiller and Sari? Would you be telling them all your deepest, darkest secrets and all these horrible things that have happened to you? Do you think that's good for them? Or do you think that maybe they should have kept some of that to themselves? We read about Stiff, where obviously Tiller and Florida are both tired and uncomfortable. And it was kind of funny because Florida called Tiller out for complaining. Would you do that? Would you tell an adult? Oh my goodness, you complain too much. And we read a long chain, and we read in a previous chapter about all the pictures of the, you know, seeing people that looked similar with the same noses or the same look. Do you have pictures in your house of your family? Maybe your grandparents, maybe cousins, maybe just you and your immediate family. Do y'all look alike? Tomorrow we're going to continue reading. I hope you all had a great time today. Be thinking about what you think is going to happen next. Do you think these adventures are going to turn out good? Or do you think there's some craziness coming our way? Till next time, guys. See you tomorrow. Bye.